All right, moving forward, we're going to talk about the bridegroom and the bride and what that symbolizes, and also the wedding feast and the wedding and getting ready for all that stuff. And remember the changes that we had in January of 2019 as you go through these, as we go through these Hebrew traditions, so that you can learn more about our own temple experience and how that has changed. Anciently, there wasn't always handwritten invitations given out. Instead, they were verbal. And after a guest was invited, they would change their robe or the side with a knot or clasp or pin on it to the other shoulder. So those doing the inviting would know that they had already been invited. Also, the removal of shoes was an ancient symbol of an agreement or a covenant. All right, let's learn about some of the Hebrew traditions around gathering for a wedding. From the book Beloved Bridegroom, Finding Christ in Ancient Jewish Marriage and Family Customs by Donna Burkhalter Nielsen. This is a synopsis mostly taken from chapter 4. The book was used as a reference. And I'm not sure who put this together, but I thank them for it. And if they want to let me know who it is, I'd be happy to note them in my references. Anciently, when a groom wrote the ketubah, the terms of marriage agreement, for his intended bride, and when she accepted, he gave her a costly gift that had cost him all, a gift that he had earned with his own labor. At that point, the couple entered into an approximate 1-year-long passage where they did not see each other at all. They were considered married, and their engagement could only be broken by divorce. During that year, the bride remained in her father's home. She busied herself polishing up her homemaking skills and making her wedding dress, her bridal wardrobe. Perhaps she would make a prayer shawl for her husband and work on her genealogy, just the kind of things that you would do getting ready to be married. She would keep her ketubah near, reading and rereading the promises her beloved had made, and knowing what a high price he had paid for her. She would depend upon his faithfulness, knowing he would come for her when all was ready. Had he not given all to claim her hand? She kept a candle burning at her window each night of their separation. So you're thinking about this. The bridegroom is Christ. The bride is the church. So remember those analogies as we go through this. The groom returns to his father's home and begins construction on a room to be added onto his father's home, a bridal chamber where he would bring his new wife. The groom did not carry out the construction alone. Usually he had friends help him. All of it was done under the supervision of his father. After all, his father had a reputation to keep, and only the most carefully constructed structure would do. In fact, the marriage could not proceed until the son received approval from his father, that all was completed to his father's satisfaction. Only then could he collect his wife, and only then could the wedding celebration proceed. The key to this was the friend of the groom. In most cases, I look at this maybe as being the prophet, who would bring news back and forth from the church to the groom, or in other words, from the groom to the bridegroom. Sorry, from the groom to the bride. And so this friend went back and forth and telling what the other one was doing, that maybe foundation had been dug and the walls were being raised and the roof was installed. And likewise, he would go to the bride in return with news that she was working on her beautiful wedding gown, or perhaps he would bring the groom a loaf of bread she had made. As the time and clues were given by the friend of the groom grew near, the bride would pack all the things she had carefully gathered for their new home, pack her clothes, be washed and anointed in readiness for the coming of her beloved bridegroom. Her greatest gift to her future husband was her personal purity and readiness and willingness to grow their own kingdom. Her friends would gather around her in anticipation of the happy event. Finally, the day came, and after careful inspection, the father now gives his son approval. The bridal chamber is complete and acceptable in every way, in his father's eyes. All the constraints that have kept them apart now fall by the wayside. He can now collect his bride, and the wedding can begin. In essence, the father just handed off the baton to his son. For an entire unspecified period of time, both the groom and both the groom and his bride have been accountable to the groom's father. In essence, in approving the wedding chamber, the father is handing the baton off. He is no longer accountable, the son is no longer accountable to his father in how to conduct his new kingdom. He has earned his father's complete trust. All is done, it is done well. Hence, the groom becomes Lord and King of his own kingdom. Likewise, the bride comes out from under the stewardship of the father through the stewardship of her future bridegroom to become the queen of this new kingdom. They are no longer children in need of constant supervision. They have learned what they need to know. They are equals before the Father, and they together are now poised to become one. Within a few nights' time, still to be determined, the bridegroom will come. There is much to be done within a very short space of time to prepare the final celebrations. But finally he will come with his friends sounding the shofar in the darkest part of the night to surprise and claim his bride. She will be borne on an Empyrean litter to her new home. So again, this is not the official second coming. This is a precursor. This is when he comes to take her, or comes to get the righteous for the wedding feast. Again, remembering the 5 wise virgins and the 5 unwise virgins. Since the procession begins late at night, and since the bridegroom walks the streets gathering guests on the way to the bride, it took some time. A messenger would run ahead to warn the people that he was coming. Perhaps he would arrive at 11:55 p.m., or perhaps he wouldn't arrive until 12:01 a.m., which would be the next day. Thus they didn't know the day or the hour. The same can be said of a woman that travaileth in labor, symbolism which is frequently used to describe second coming events. A woman may go into labor on a certain morning, but not give birth until the next day. We know the baby is coming, but we don't know the day or the hour. And in these scriptures, again, we can see the bridegroom coming for the bride happens somewhere in the middle. The wedding feast takes place before the official second coming. So if we read these scriptures, let's see what that looks like. D&C 8895. And there shall be silence in heaven for about the space of half an hour. And immediately after shall the curtain of heaven be unfolded, as